Hi, I'm Jed King, CEO of Sales Factory. We were founded over 35 years ago with a simple idea: help our home improvement brands listen to the end user and do something about it. Today, that simple philosophy guides our marketing work as much as ever. And when we do it right, it not only helps our client's brand grow, but it also helps their customer, the retailer, grow. So I'm proud to announce today that we have a new series called Winning the PLR. It takes a deep dive into winning with the merchant, but also winning in the marketplace. So what do we know about PLRs? Well, we've done a few. Check out that high school scoreboard that hangs in our office. That's a real thing with real numbers on it. 119 and 10 losses. That's since 2015. It's a pretty good record, right? So how is that possible? Again, it's the simple idea of listening. Whether it's an end user's a pro or a DIYer or an MRO, we listen and we help our clients' brands take action. So the first part of this series is on market sizing. I know that sounds like a snoozer, and it's not the most exciting part, but it's a significant opportunity because it's the first part and it's the first step towards taking a win. So take it away.
I'm Ashley Dillon, Vice President of Marketing Strategy here at Sales Factory, and today we're going to talk about market sizing. So why market sizing? Well, you're going to be asked. As part of the PLR process, your merchant's going to ask you to submit information related to what's the market size and what's your share. And a lot of people, they just phone it in. They just copy and paste from what they did last time and call it a day. So if you do more than that, you're already winning. But we think you can do so much more than that and really use this as an opportunity to establish yourself as a partner in this PLR, as a resource that really cares about understanding the market and driving the business. So let's start by understanding, why do they ask for this? Don't they just have this information? Well, not exactly. In other categories like grocery, for instance, there are third parties that track point of sale and aggregate that data, and you can subscribe to their reports. You can see how you're performing and how your competitors are performing, and likewise they can do the same. You can see how they ran a promotion and maybe it went really well, and they're probably going to do that this year. It really levels that playing field. However, in home improvement, there's no single source of truth. That just doesn't exist. The Home Depot merchants, they know their data and they have a good idea of how they compare to Lowe's, but they don't have a 100% accurate view. They don't have that third-party resource to really validate their assumptions or how they think the market looks. So they rely on suppliers to bring them that information. And so we bring that as part of the PLR process, and then they take that information and they look at all the different data sources and really triangulate to try to build their own picture of what they think that the market looks like and how they're performing. And why is this important? Well, it is another step in the PLR process, and like I said, some people just check the box and move on, but we think you have to win at every single step of the process. If you can establish yourself and your brand as someone who really digs into the data, who cares about the numbers, and who wants to make informed decisions, you're going to be more valuable to that merchant, and it'll help with that relationship with the merchant, and also just setting you up as a source of information and a source of trust. So how do we begin this? How do we go through the market sizing approach? You begin by looking at your own data, something that you're already doing, something you're very familiar with. So DART reports, Acuity, for instance, you want to dig into your point of sale information. And as you're looking at that, look at things like zero sales. Look at stocking levels. Start looking for things that are probably going to be conversation topics for your merchant as you get into these discussions. You're also going to want to look at third-party reports, things like eMarketer, for example. And third-party reports can be really valuable. They can give you that higher level view of a category, but you have to be really cautious with how you use them. Here you can see that these are two reports for the same category, but they differ by $1 billion. I'm sure you guys have heard the quote, $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking real money. $1 billion is a lot to be different. So how could these two reports be so far apart? It's not necessarily that it's a typo or that one of them is just completely off base. They probably looked at the data differently. They analyzed it differently. And you can't sit down with these third-party reports and talk to the analyst about how they analyze them. You can't talk to them about their assumptions. So you have to look at them and take them for what they're worth. And definitely we recommend looking at more than one. You can't get one report and view it as the single source of truth. You need to look at different reports and see where they might differ and where they align to really help you continue building that story. And if the reports are so different, how does anyone know what the truth is? How does anyone know how to make sense of all this different information? Everybody's going to be bringing their own story that makes their brand look good. So to help your merchant the most, you need to dig into that data and understand the numbers, but also look at it from the perspective of that end user and how they're experiencing the store. And as you get into those stores, you'll start to really uncover some nuances that'll help the numbers make more sense. So for instance, we recommend that you walk 10 stores in 5 markets, but 20 stores in 10 markets, that's even better. The more stores you're in and the more experience you have in those shoes of the consumer, the shoes of the end user, the more you're going to really start to understand why those numbers look the way they do on paper. And you can start building that story and rationalizing some of this information. Because as we all know, same sets can look very different depending on where you're at in the country. That's why we really push for you to look at stores in multiple markets, not just focus on the one that's in your backyard. So leverage your team members to try to get out to as many different areas as you can. Here you can see in plastic totes, for instance, you've got one set that's on the floor, one is set on shelving. When you look at that and experience it, and then you look at the numbers, you can start to understand why maybe one's outperforming the other. There are things that are going to be different across the country, and it's important to take note of those. For instance, right now, thinking just about things resetting as we're approaching spring, we live in North Carolina, and we're starting to see grills and patio furniture, and it's getting me really excited for warm weather. However, in Wisconsin, you're not seeing those things. Sorry, guys. So it's definitely important to think about where you're at in the reset schedule for that area of the country, and just keep using all of that to build up these inputs that you'll use to build your models. And as you're in the stores, you're going to maybe notice some things that you can fix with your own product. So use some of those zero sales reports, for instance, and when you're in the store, shore up some issues that you might be having there ahead of that PLR. We also recommend that you walk with your merchant. So a lot of people don't want to ask them to do this because merchants are busy, but this can be a really valuable use of your time and of theirs. This is a chance for you to talk to them, understand where their head's at, talk to them about what's moving and what isn't, what they think their share is, where the competition might be winning in some different areas, and use all of that to really set a stage for where you can improve and how you can grow your business and their business. All of these inputs are really valuable as you're starting to figure out what does the market look like. Hearing from the merchant is another input that can really help you. And we've talked a lot about the brick and mortar environment, but we certainly can't forget about that online retail channel. So something that didn't exist 10 years ago is the ability to really mine for data and scrape websites. You can see things like movement data, you can see pricing information, of course you can see what your consumers are reacting to, you can see what your competitors are advertising and what they're not. There's a wealth of information out there that you can mine, you just have to carve out the time to do so because it can be incredibly time consuming. All that information to go through, it takes time to figure out how you're going to go through it and make sense of it. Now we've talked about scraping websites, we've talked about getting into stores with the merchant, without the merchant, we've talked about looking at third-party reports and your own data. Now you're going to use all of that and start building out your models. And one more really valuable input is your own brain. You've been in this category, you know some of the reasons why things perform and things don't perform. You have a good handle on how different retailers compare across different categories. That's something that's going to really help you as you're gut checking. You want to look at the numbers on paper and that'll tell you a story, but you also want to gut check it to understand, does this make sense in the real world? So that's another input that's going to be really valuable to you throughout this process. Here you can see that we have started modeling out and looking at club store, dollar store, and office supply too. And that's something that they don't always ask for, but it can be really valuable. For the pro audience, you're probably going to want to include things like STAFTA and Granger, for example. The more that you pull that data in, the more robust and the richer your data inputs, the better your story is going to be, and the better it will really add up to make sense of what's happening in the market. And something that's probably more important now than it's been in years, think about all the changes and the shifts that we've experienced over the last 18 months. Things have changed drastically from how people are shopping to what types of projects they're working on. This industry has really seen giant shifts in the way people behave. And you have to make sure that you're accounting for those and that you're thinking about those and how they are impacting the market, how they're impacting it today and what that size looks like, and then how it's going to change over time. And you can't just rely on your data that you've used, for years, because it has shifted so drastically. Different models and different reports and things that we've used in the past, those have to be reworked because the market has changed so much. So you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping up with that and that you're using it and thinking about how it factors into the overall story and the holistic view of what the category looks like and where the category is going. And then we recommend Market Sizing Plus. So you want to definitely do all these things to build your models and have the best inputs that you can so your model makes the most sense. And you want to gut check that model. And then we also think it's important to take it a step further. They didn't ask for you to come with information about what you're going to do about these shifting markets, but there's nothing stopping you from including that and going ahead and starting that conversation now. Showing them that you are not only, putting the effort into the market sizing, but that you're using those numbers and you're using that data and you're really going to leverage that to build out the best bay that's going to be a win, not only for you, but really for them at the end of the day. That's where they're focused, is how are you going to drive sales? So taking it that step further is a great way to keep building on that relationship with your merchant. To summarize kind of the sizing of the market, make sure that you are putting your best foot forward, that you're doing that legwork that we talked about today. You're going to gather your point of sale data and your third-party reports and look at them through a lens of, does this make sense in the real world? Does this really help me to build out a story? And you're going to want to look at multiple third-party reports. You're going to walk stores in multiple markets, both with and without your merchant, just to really get an understanding of what that environment looks like and what's the consumer experiencing right now, and how does that align with the data that I'm seeing in my reporting. You're also going to want to scrape websites so you get that digital view of what is happening out in the marketplace. And then you're going to use that along with your own experience in the category to build out your models and to make sure those gut checks that this actually makes sense. What I'm seeing on paper, what I'm putting on paper, it seems realistic and it aligns with reality. Then you're also going to be able to identify some weaknesses and some strengths and start using those as inputs into your plan for the bay and your plan for the PLR as part of that Market Sizing Plus that we talked about. Really understanding the shifting market and how you can leverage those changes to make an impact for the retailer. And that concludes today's session. We're really looking forward to hearing from you guys. If you have any questions, certainly reach out. Coming up next in our series is Know the End User, where we're going to dive into not only pro and DIY cuts, but we're also going to talk about one of your most important customers, which is your merchant. So looking forward to seeing you guys for that. See you guys soon.